All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope all of you guys had a great weekend. Got a jam-packed show for you today. Off the top, we're going to do my top 5 takeaways from the in-season tournament semifinal games. And then after that, like we do every Monday, we'll do power rankings going through our top 10 teams in the league. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. Don't forget it's also helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. We also have brand new social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for the Hoops Tonight channel. Make sure you guys follow us there, where we will be releasing more content throughout this season. And then last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so we can hit them in our Friday mailbags throughout the rest of the way here. All right, let's talk some basketball. So 5 big takeaways from the in-season tournament semifinal games. Number 1, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is playing some truly special basketball. He shook off a really rough shooting start in the first half. Kind of an interesting matchup between Houston and Oklahoma City because two elite perimeter defense groups with a lot of speed. But there's just a huge difference in the total amount of offensive skill between those two rosters, which continued to bear out, especially when you got into the second half of that game. But Shai, obviously, it's like you're facing a steady diet of guys like Dillon Brooks and Amen Thompson and really strong, physical, long defenders that can take away a lot of the advantages that Shai has against other guards in the league, right? But like he just stayed with it after having a rough shooting start, really started to get going in that third quarter, hit some ridiculous isolation moves against Amen Thompson, who's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. I trimmed an example of one where he dribbled really hard at Amen's left shoulder, so a right-handed drive, and Amen cut it off, as he should. He's a quick athlete laterally, as quick an athlete laterally as you'll find in the league. He's not the guy you're going to beat with the first move, right? Like I always think about these isolation matchups as like there's the advantage that the offensive player has, right? So like, for instance, if you are a player that is considerably faster and maybe a bit stronger than the guy you're going against, you don't want to mess around with the ball. You just want to rip through like immediately on the catch and allow your first step and your strength to power through the defensive player and go, right? But when you're in a matchup like this, where it's kind of the opposite, where the guy who's guarding you is maybe a little taller, maybe a little quicker, and a guy that you can't go through, then suddenly it becomes about misdirection, change of pace, counter moves, like getting that defender out of position one way or another, right? So Shai hits a hard dribble move to the right, a man cuts him off, takes the contact in the chest, and Shai pulls back the dribble through his legs to his left hand. But I had this coach in JUCO that used to talk about this, and it's something that I've always tried to imprint on the kids that I train when I'm training my high school kids. And that is, when you're in your dribble moves, it's more important to focus on hitting dribble moves in drills attached to an actual forward movement, something that's an attack, or in the case of shooting, attaching it to a jump shot. So like when I do ball handling drills with the kids, it's always like we're ball handling into an aggressive forward move, or we're ball handling into a jump shot off the dribble. If you can't connect the move to what comes next, then the move is useless. There are a lot of guys in the league that if they get cut off can pull back between their legs back to their left hand. Go to this clip that I posted on my Twitter feed, again, at _JasonLT. You'll see as Shai takes that contact and pulls it back between his legs, he's immediately back forward. And because he's able to do that, he's able to get an angle on Amen Thompson. Then Amen Thompson again, because he's Amen Thompson, recovers with his lateral quickness to get back in front of Shai. But as Amen is taking that aggressive step to get back in front of him, that's when Shai lifts up off the dribble, catching Amen Thompson between steps, and he's able to get enough separation to knock down the shots. Just super, super elite dribble combination work, footwork to get an opening against one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. And I've talked about this with Shai before, but he's one of the best at connecting multiple dribble combinations in contact. It's one of the biggest things that players struggle with is they can, when things are free, when it's like, oh, if I can hit a move to get a guy set up for a screen and I can get him separated from me on a screen, then yeah, I can hit an in and out dribble into a step back, or I can cross over to snake the pick and roll or something when I'm in space. but it's very different when you're in a congested environment, when you have a lot of bodies around you. We're going to get a little bit further into this when we talk about Hartenstein, but this is the type of scoring that has more playoff resiliency. When you can do it in contact, when you can do it in congestion, that is the type of shot making that inevitably rises to the surface when you get to the postseason. Defenses lock down all your pet actions. The easy opportunities are few and far between, and it becomes a lot about squeezing extra bits of offense out of late clock situations, in situations where your offense doesn't work and you need somebody to rescue. And again, he'll dribble at you. It doesn't matter if you cut him off. He's always going to chain it to the next counter move. Doesn't matter if you cut him off again. He'll chain it to the next counter move. Oh, you cut him off a few times. He'll get rid of the ball, pop right back out, get it, and rip back. If you overplay, he'll back cut. That's the thing that Isaiah Hartenstein has helped unlock, right? Just a lot of really, really high-level offensive stuff out of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Really, really impressive second half against the Houston Rockets. His last 15 games, Shai's averaging 33 points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists on 52% from the field, 38% from three, and 85% from the line. The pull-up three-point shot, that's something he was working on a lot in the early part of the season, has really been a boost to his offense. He's averaging 7 three-point attempts per game. In that 15-game stretch, 6 of those 7 three-point attempts are off the dribble, and he's hitting them at 35%, over 35%, which is going to get him over a point per shot, which makes it a useful shot for him in half-court situations. Again, and we talked about this a lot. Him and Jalen Williams spent a lot of time this summer working on that pull-up jump shot from the three-point line rather than from the mid-range area. And by the way, in that game, Oklahoma City, trailing by 1 in the second half, bang, bang. A pull-up three by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander off the dribble. Another pull-up three by Jalen Williams kind of in a ball screen as a defender went underneath the pick. Couple pull-up threes. All of a sudden, Oklahoma City's up 5 and they never look back. That's the type of thing that will be a ceiling raiser for this Thunder team. The off-the-dribble three-point shooting, adding layers to the offense that weren't there last year. Number 2, the Thunder in the big picture need to start thinking of Isaiah Hartenstein as one of their core 5 players, and not just a bench weapon or a player with which to facilitate a big look. The Isaiah Hartenstein fit in Oklahoma City has been an absolute dream on both ends of the floor. On defense, he provides a credible option for power centers. Şengün has been cooking a lot of centers around the league, including some of the better defensive players at the center position in the league. He's playing really good basketball. He's been Houston's best player this year. He's a huge, to be able to have a player that can hang with the Şengün, the way that Hartenstein did in that game, really giving Şengün a lot of fits in that particular game. His ability to be a credible weapon in that type of matchup, but then also a guy that you can throw at Jokic, a guy you can throw at Sabonis, a guy you can throw at Yusuf Nurkic, a guy you can throw at Anthony Davis, a guy you can throw at Jaren Jackson, who's trying to Hakeem everybody in the league at this point in time. Zubac, whoever you run into in a Western Conference playoff series, there's a good chance if you're going to win multiple playoff rounds that you'll have to go through multiple power centers. And power centers can give Chet issues at times. Now, Chet has also won those battles sometimes, but he's at physical disadvantages there. And Hartenstein just makes their center rotation that much more formidable in a conference where you kind of need to have a formidable center rotation. I thought he did a really nice job on Şengün. He's also solid across the board as a defender. He can run credible drop coverages, at the level coverages. He can switch pretty well, has really anchored them on the glass. Again, when he's off the floor this year, when Hartenstein's off the floor, the Thunder are giving up an offensive rebound on 33% of their opponent's misses. With Isaiah Hartenstein on the floor, that number decreases by 5.6%. So again, to clarify it, when Hartenstein is off the floor, the Thunder, their defensive rebounding percentage is 67%, meaning opponents get 33% back. When Hartenstein is on the floor, their defensive rebound percentage rises all the way up to 72.6%. So they're giving up an offensive rebound on just 27.4% of their opponent's misses. That's a gigantic difference. That's the difference between untenably bad and pretty good. And that's what Isaiah Hartenstein has done for this team in their physicality on the front line. And then on the offense, just greasing the wheels, just connecting actions with his side-to-side flowing handoffs, opening up actions with his screening, finishing plays with his scoring. He's generating 4 offensive rebounds per 36 minutes. He's just too good. Like, I don't think you can leave him on the bench all that often or change too much of your approach when Chet comes back, because he's one of your 5 best players. When Chet comes back, I would lean as much as possible into Chet Hartenstein lineups together. Because when Chet comes back, again, like when Chet comes back, you're going to have to do a certain amount of staggering to keep a big on the floor all the time. There's going to be a certain amount of like lineups that are going to have one big on the floor. But my thing is, like, when you're in a big spot, when you're in a big playoff series, again, there's some matchup flexibility, but there's such a gap between Isaiah Hartenstein and the 6th best player on the team. Or I should say Isaiah Hartenstein's more like the 4th best player on the team. But like if you go Shai, J-Dub, Chet, or Shai, Chet, J-Dub, however you want to order it, then there's Dort and Hartenstein. If you take Hartenstein off the floor and replace him with a guy like an Isaiah Joe or a Cason Wallace or Alex Caruso, those are good players, and there will be matchups where that makes sense. But I think Isaiah Hartenstein is just that good, and I think they need to lean into as much opportunity and repetition as possible for Chet and Isaiah to play together, because inevitably I think that will give them the best opportunity to leave all 5 of their best players on the floor when the chips are down. Side note, Lou Dort was incredible in that Rockets game. He had 5 threes, including some really tightly contested ones. You know, the classic Lou Dort, like, doesn't even look like he's that open, but he just shoots that sky ball that just goes like 30 feet in the air and just falls right through the rim. He also had 3 steals, a couple of crazy ones too. He had one where he was denying Fred VanVleet almost out at half court and then disengaged from Fred to steal an entry pass to a different player that was flashing around the right wing. Just an unbelievable player who's incredibly useful and fills a very important role for that Oklahoma City team. Number 3, Houston is a really talented team, but their development as a team will be stunted until they can get a legitimate high-level perimeter shot creator. And no, Alperen Sengun is not enough. Houston did periodically cause problems for Oklahoma City in transition in that game, but they got absolutely bludgeoned in the half court. Oklahoma City outscored Houston in the half court by 40 points per 100 possessions. Houston managed just a 63 offensive rating per cleaning the glass in the half court in that game against Oklahoma City. That's completely untenable. Once again, just complete duds from Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet that combined to go 2 for 19 from 3. A lot of really bad off the dribble ones too. They were kind of telegraphing them. It kind of felt like anytime you gave them the ball, they'd call for the ball screen and they would both just like dribble as hard as they could to get to the other side of the screen and just rise up and shoot. Sometimes without even making a read. There was a play where Fred VanVleet came off of a screen and got blocked on a pull-up 3. And I just don't even know what he saw. The big was up at the level. It wasn't open. I just didn't know what he was doing. It was a really, really weird game from those guys. Houston's half-court offense on the season now is managing just 90.5 points per 100 possessions. That ranks 25th. These are 3 teams that have more efficient half-court offenses than the Houston Rockets: the Toronto Raptors, the Utah Jazz, and the Detroit Pistons. Again, that is completely untenable. So this story just eventually ends with them packaging 1 or 2 of their young players in draft compensation with Fred VanVleet's expiring $43 million deal to bring in a star. They just have to find the right guy. I was kind of poking around this morning because, like, I think they're the kind of team that needs to wait for the right guy. But so much of it depends on how much they want to manage their cap situation, because, like, you have Sengun and Jalen Green's contracts, their extensions kick in next year. So you've got all that money. But you don't have to pay guys like Amen Thompson or Jabari Smith Jr. I think Jabari Smith you have to pay like the year after next, and then Amen Thompson and even a year further into the future. So because they're not going to have to do any sort of significant extension or new deal for somebody in the next couple of years, I wonder if they're the team that makes sense for Zach LaVine. Like, I wonder if they're the team that should just call up Chicago and be like, we'll give you Fred VanVleet for Zach LaVine straight up. The way it benefits both teams is Chicago gets off of Zach LaVine's money because it's 2 additional years at that number, right? But Houston, in the short term, gets a much better offensive player in Zach LaVine to hopefully unlock something in the half court with how good this Houston defense is. And at the end of the day, it passes the buck for the superstar trade down the line. I just wonder if they're going to end up letting Fred go because they just don't want to deal with the money element of it. And we'll see. There's obviously cap ramifications as it pertains to the second apron. And it could affect some of their decision-making down the roster. But, like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, are they going to jump on a Jimmy Butler, well, it's like, I don't know if that's the right move. Are they going to jump on a Brandon Ingram? I don't think he's the right type of guy for them to go for. So like, you're trying to wait for the right type of star to become available so that you can throw the kitchen sink at him, bring him in, and try to run for a championship, right? Well, one of the ways to pass the buck in that regard is to turn Fred VanVleet, an expiring mediocre star player, not even a star, into Zach LaVine. A little bit longer term deal, obviously, but you're in a stretch right now where you're not trying to do much anyway. You could turn around and trade him in the future if you need to. It prevents you from losing Fred VanVleet for nothing this summer, unless they want to. They may want to lose Fred VanVleet for nothing this summer. We'll see. But like, that's just one of the guys that I was thinking. Here's the thing. I don't think anybody's going to make a trade for Zach LaVine. But as I try to conceptualize a version of a situation where a team might be like, hey, let's go get Zach LaVine. The one that I'm looking at right now is like Fred VanVleet and Zach LaVine make basically the same money right now for this season. So if you could turn Fred VanVleet into a much, much, much better offensive player overnight, that could be the kind of thing that gives this Houston team a more formidable two-way attack as opposed to just a defense that can't score when they get strangled in the half court. It's the most wonderful time of the year for getting in on all of the hoops, football, and hockey action at DraftKings Sportsbook. In the season of giving, we're being gifted college football and basketball, pro football and basketball, and pro hockey too. Almost 24/7. So many games every day, so many opportunities to place your first bet. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. Current Super Bowl winners on DraftKings right now, the Detroit Lions at plus 260 and the Kansas City Chiefs at plus 425. And here's a gift for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Happy holidays from DraftKings. The crown is yours. It's time to go back to viewing the Bucks as a legitimate second-tier championship contender. After the rough start they had to the season, I know it felt like it was impossible, but they've really turned it around and played some really good basketball. Another really impressive win over a good Atlanta Hawks team in the NBA Cup semifinal. They're 12-3 in their last 15 games. That's tied for the best record in the league over that span. 11th in offense, 10th in defense, 8th in net rating. Still struggling a bit with their athleticism deficiencies in a couple of areas, namely the glass and then in transition. But they're really competing night in and night out to build better habits and attention to detail. They found an orientation on defense that is working by leaning more into Andre Jackson and AJ Green than they were into Pat Connaughton and DeLon Wright. That's been working. And then on offense, the return of Chris Middleton has brought this influx of ball handling, which they've really needed. He's had 23 assists and just 6 turnovers in his 4 games since returning. They'll have games where teams are showing at the level against Chris and Dame, and they'll just rep Giannis as a roller all night long, and he'll crush teams as a roller. Then they'll face teams like Atlanta who do a lot more switching, and then they'll start going to Giannis attacking mismatches in the post or Dame attacking forwards from the perimeter. There's a sequence at the end of the Hawks game where it's like Jalen Johnson's on Giannis, Dyson Daniels is on Dame. They run a ball screen. There's a switch. Giannis takes Dyson Daniels down to the block, promptly draws a double team, makes a beautiful pass to Brook Lopez. He gets a layup. Okay, you run the same ball screen. It's a switch. Now Jalen Johnson is on Dame. Dyson Daniels on Giannis. Dame takes Jalen Johnson off the dribble, gets right into the lane because Jalen Johnson, even as good of an athlete as he is, Dame is just really small and quick. He gets past him, sinks a floater, and it ices the game, right? Like they have different ways that they can attack based on the different matchups that they're going against. And again, they were in a bad funk to start this year. They didn't look serious about their goals or committed to the work, but their process has been really good over the last month, and they have completely turned around their fortunes. They are rightfully underdogs against Oklahoma City. Right now, DraftKings has them as a 4.5-point underdog. But if they can go into Vegas tomorrow night and get a win, that would be a huge statement about their potential within the season. Giannis will have speed and size mismatches against everybody basically on the Thunder roster. If he can dominate that game, they get enough stops, they keep Oklahoma City out of transition, they don't turn the basketball over too much. Again, that's a game that could get ugly for Milwaukee. We've seen that type of game get ugly for Milwaukee. The younger, faster, more athletic team gets a bunch of steals and runs it down their throat in transition. If they can avoid that and kind of trap things and have Giannis dominate, they got a shot. And if they can win that game, it'd be a big statement about their potential. We're going to talk more about the Hawks game here in a second as part of this next question. Lastly, number 5, the top 5 players are putting on a show as they jockey for position at the top of this league. Giannis was just absolutely unreal down the stretch of the Atlanta game. He obviously had the huge block against Clint Capella and help at the rim. That's a just deja vu from the 2021 NBA Finals. Giannis blocking a alley-oop dunk in a really important, high-stakes situation like that. But he also did some of the most surgical half-court work I've ever seen Giannis do in the NBA. He had a beautiful cross-court pass to Andre Jackson in crunch time for a three in the right corner. Just beautiful pass, beautiful read in a ball screen. He had like a left shoulder fadeaway that he hit on the left block in clutch time, where he like for a right-handed shooter to turn and fade over your left shoulder is the hardest shot because you have to swing your entire body around to get squared up. Really high-level bit of shot making from Giannis as like over a double team. He just like elevated like Kobe Bryant over his left shoulder to knock down a mid-range jump shot. Then he had this beautiful post-up feed where he got that switch. I was talking about this earlier, where gets Dyson Daniels in a switch off of the Dame action, backs him down, draws Clint Capella and help, feeds Brook Lopez nicely right in front of the rim for that little layup. Just really nice surgical work from Giannis. And here's the thing, like Jokic is still the best player in the world, and I haven't seen anything that's changed my opinion on that. But all of these top tier stars are playing some unbelievable basketball. We talked about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander off the top of the show. Giannis is averaging 34, 11, and 7 in his last 13 games. Luka's been kicking butt since he came back from his injury. He just dropped a 45, 11, and 13 to beat the Warriors in Golden State last night. Tatum's numbers have taken a little dip in the last few weeks. His last 9 games, he's at 25, 10 and 5 on just 44% from the field and 29% from three. But he was playing some of the best basketball of his career before that, and he had a little bit of a knee injury. So the point is like the top of this league is just in an absolutely crazy place right now. It actually reminds me of about 6 or 7 years ago when like LeBron was still at the top of his league, or like at the top of his game and the top of the league. Steph and KD are both like hot on his tail, like getting their shit together, winning those titles in Golden State. James Harden's coming up, right? Like that was right around the time Giannis started to get his kind of like momentum as a number one player in the league. Like a lot of talent at the top of the league right now. It just feels like there's a lot of guys competing for that top spot, which is again a credit to Jokic because I still think he has a hold on it at this point. All right, let's get into our power rankings. It's going to be quick hitters on a lot of these. Most of the teams in the NBA have only played once or twice since our last rankings. So we're not going to get too deep into those, but all of our odds are provided by our partner at DraftKings. Again, after every single team, I will give you guys their conference odds and their title odds. Number 10, the Miami Heat. Only one game last week, a win at home over the Toronto Raptors. Tyler Herro continues his excellent start to the season, and Bam Adebayo's offense is starting to take off. He's averaging 7 assists per game over his last 8 games, and he's averaging 21 points per game after his last 3 games. And all of the reporting has been indicating that the Heat are looking to move on from Jimmy Butler at some point before the deadline. Who knows where he'll end up? But I think it's a good idea. This is a team that is starting to play some good basketball. They've won 4 in a row against some good teams. And Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo are really taking off. That partnership is working. So it's as good a time as any to try to turn Jimmy Butler into assets that will help the Heat kind of propel themselves into the next era. Right now, the Miami Heat are plus 1,400 to win the Eastern Conference and plus 3,500 to win the title. Number 9, the Denver Nuggets. Just one game last week, a blowout of the Clippers on Friday night. A weird game with a lot of turnovers and a lot of the game being played in transition. But they were able to win comfortably without needing a superhero game from Jokic. He went for just 16, 7, and 2 in that game. 6 guys in double figures for the Nuggets, including both Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson off the bench. So a nice little bounce back. They had lost 5 out of 8. And they had back-to-back blowout wins after that to get back on track. The Nuggets right now are plus 650 to win the Western Conference, plus 1,400 to win the NBA championship. Number 8, the New York Knicks. Disappointing loss in the in-season tournament quarterfinal game. Completely lost control of Atlanta in the third quarter. They got going in transition. They got going on the offensive glass. The momentum just like completely shifted. Then Trey just started picking them apart in the half court in ball screens. And then the Knicks entered a funk on offense, missed a bunch of open shots, and they never regained control. They really struggled to keep them off the offensive glass in that fourth quarter stretch when they were trying to make a run. They gave up 9 offensive rebounds. It was a really interesting example of basketball momentum. Synergy has this graph where they just basically show like a bar graph that kind of works across from the start to the finish of the game. And as the lead shifts, the bar, like if New York's up 5, the bar will be a little 5-point bar up top. But if they go down 5, it'll be a 5-point bar on the bottom to the colors of those teams. And it was such an interesting visual example of the shift in momentum, because like the Knicks just completely had control of the game for 2.5 quarters. Like it was all blue. And then suddenly it was just like a hard shift to red, and then it was all red the rest of the way. It was like really bizarre to see just that visual representation of the gigantic shift in momentum. The Knicks were playing really good basketball, but just a couple of plays. Like that's the thing, plays can snowball. Couple guys make a couple of steals, get out in transition, couple layups. That sets your defense. You start to get a little lively. Then you get stuck in the half court, but Trey rescues you a few times. The Knicks start missing some shots. It can spin out of control pretty quickly for you, and that was a classic example of that. But the Knicks did get a nice bounce back win in Orlando in a game where Jalen Suggs, who had been killing everybody, finally came back to earth on offense. The Knicks are 11-4 in their last 15 games. They're still the number 1 offense in the league over that span. They're up to 15th in defense. The defensive rebounding issues that came up in the Atlanta game are a bit of a trend. They were 7th in defensive rebounding in their first 11 games. They're 20th in defensive rebounding in their last 15 games. So just something to keep an eye on there. They're not competing on the glass as well as they did. The Knicks are plus 450 to win the Eastern Conference, plus 1,000 to win the NBA championship. Number 7, the Memphis Grizzlies. Just 2 games last week. They beat the Brooklyn Nets and talked a bunch of shit while doing it. That was the Jordy Fernandez, Ja Morant show that we saw. But then they got beat wire to wire by the Lakers. Didn't take a single lead in that game. Ja Morant had a really hard time with the Max Christie, Anthony Davis duo. He had 12 made field goals and assists, 22 missed field goals and turnovers. Really, really tough game for Ja. The jump shot was the issue. He was just 2 for 9 on jump shots against the Lakers. He's shooting just 29% this year off the dribble on jump shots, which is making it a lot easier for teams to not have to come up to the level or have to worry about him. The Lakers did a lot of work at the level with him last night, but you don't have to worry about Ja knocking down shots at ball screens from the perimeter, and that is allowing teams more defensive flexibility with their scheme. Again, shooting just 29% this year on off-the-dribble jump shots. The Lakers have their roster limitations, but they did a good job of keeping either Max or Cam Reddish or Gabe Vincent on him all night, with either Anthony Davis or Christian Koloko waiting on him at the rim. And the Grizzlies still have some spacing issues. They're just 25th overall on the season in spot-up efficiency. Last night, they had 32 spot-up opportunities against the Lakers, and they converted them to just 19 points. So that's the one big red flag with Memphis right now, is they can still bog down a little bit on offense from time to time when teams pack the paint because of their inability to convert spot-up possessions. That game against the Lakers last night was a good example of that. The Grizzlies right now, plus 1,400 to win the Western Conference, plus 3,000 to win an NBA title. And for Lakers fans who are listening and wondering where I'm at with the Lakers after last night, good win. They'll have many more good wins this year. They may even have some streaks of good wins. But for this team, it's not about what they can be when they're at their best. It's about their commitment to the work on a daily basis over the months it would take to build the habits necessary for this roster to be a great team. And I just don't think that this group is up to the task mentally. For example, their next 6 games, they're at Sacramento again, home for Detroit, at Golden State, and then home for Sacramento and home for Cleveland. If they commit to the work, they might be okay. Last night was another one of those 2 or 3 games I've seen from the Lakers this year where they looked super connected and committed on defense. They've also been running some more traditional at-the-level coverages and ball screens instead of switching, which is a good idea. I don't think this roster is really the right type of roster for switching. But more often than not this year, they have not been willing to do that work on the defensive end of the floor, and I don't think they'll do it in the next few weeks. These are some tough matchups on the road against some teams that are a lot more athletic on the perimeter, which is a specific weakness for the Lakers. Like a serious and committed Lakers team would probably go 4-2 in this stretch. They'd probably split the Sacramento games on the road, and they'd probably win all of the home games. I think it's more likely that they go 2-4. In the 6-game stretch. My guess is that they drop both games in Sacramento. My guess is they lose in Golden State. My guess is they lose at home to Cleveland. Maybe they get Sacramento at home, and then they probably will get Detroit at home. But like, that's just how I feel, because in order to go win all of these games on the road against tough, fast perimeter teams like that, they need to be sharp and committed on defense, and it's just something I haven't seen this year. But we'll see. My belief in this team is completely lost. Like you watched last night and it's like AD is kicking the shit out of Jaren Jackson and LeBron is engaged and flying around, making plays on both ends. And Austin Reeves is back and he's outplaying Desmond Bane like straight up. It all looks good, but I'm not falling for it again. Number 6, the Houston Rockets. We hit them in the opening segment, so I won't hit them again, but the Rockets right now are plus 2,200 to win the Western Conference, plus 6,500 to win the NBA title. The Milwaukee Bucks, we also hit them in the opening segment, so I won't hit them again. The Bucks are plus 800 to win the Eastern Conference, plus 1,800 to win the NBA Finals. Number 4, the Dallas Mavericks. Really disappointing loss in the in-season tournament quarterfinals to Oklahoma City, but I was actually impressed by Dallas in that performance. I know it sounds crazy to say, but I really poured over the film in that one. I did a full film session on that game. You can find that in our feed. It's labeled Western Conference Finals Preview. I think it was like 37 clips from that game where I went into extensive detail, but I thought Dallas handled Oklahoma City's blitzes and their doubles really well. They just completely botched the game in their own backcourt. They gave up countless offensive rebounds, a lot of turnovers before they even got the ball across half court, like turnovers on outlet passes, turnovers on kick ahead passes, turnovers just bringing the ball down after rebounds and not paying attention to what was happening after them. I saw someone say on Twitter, like, that's just what Oklahoma City does. And yeah, that's true. But Oklahoma City averages 10 offensive rebounds and 23 points off of turnovers per game. They gave up 17 offensive rebounds and 36 points off of turnovers per game. So you clean that up. I'm not saying you're going to hold them to 0-0, but you clean that up a little bit. You have a bigger lead in the first half. You're more well-positioned to withstand a scoring onslaught like what you saw from Shai to start that third quarter, and maybe you win that game. And then Dallas bounced back with a super impressive road win in Golden State against the Warriors. They put up 143 points. They jumped them right off the bat. They had 81 in the first half, really strangled Golden State's offense in the starting group. They outscored the Golden State starting lineup by 18 points. It was a kind of a butt-kicking starters versus starters. Luka goes for a preposterous 45 points, 11 rebounds, and 13 assists. 6 guys scoring double figures. Nice little revenge game for Klay Thompson. He goes for a season-high 29. A lot of damage just on skip passes and ball screens and in transition when the Warriors were losing him. The Warriors on multiple occasions made pushes, got the game close, only for Dallas to immediately pull away. I still think that's the second best team in the Western Conference. If you agree with me, the Mavericks right now are plus 550 to win the conference and plus 1,100 to win the NBA title. Number 3, the Boston Celtics, just 2 games last week. Blowouts of the Wizards and the Pistons, all really balanced. They had 6 guys in double figures against Detroit, 7 guys in double figures against Washington. Peyton Pritchard had a really nice game against Detroit. He went for 27, just cruising through kind of an easy stretch of their schedule. The only weird thing is that Jason Tatum's jumper is cooled way off again. In his last 9 games, he's 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 44% from the field, 29% from 3. On the season now, he's down to 0.95 points per pull-up jump shot, 1.02 points per jump shot overall. Those are both just barely up from where he was last year. But important context, he was dealing with a knee injury, missed some games. When your knees aren't right, it affects your ability to like, a jump shot is not just a flip of the wrist. A jump shot is a transfer of energy from the floor, starting with your feet, all the way through the snap of your wrist. And if your knee's bothering you and you're not getting the same level of lift on your jump shot, it throws the entire equation out of whack. And I personally feel like whenever I don't have my legs underneath me, it's harder to shoot. Everybody who's ever played basketball knows exactly what I'm talking about. So like I more of the opinion that this is mostly having to do with the knee. And then over the next couple of weeks here, Tatum will probably just go back to being blazing hot and get his numbers back up where they were. But just kind of a weird trend. Again, I in the power rankings, I've had the Celtics lower, but to me, I still think they're a clear-cut number 1. I was watching OKC Houston yesterday, and then I watched a bit of it yesterday and a bit of it this morning. The Thunder still take so many stupid shots. They still do. There's still just a lot of young players. They have a lot of guys on the floor. Like J-Dub is still a little like this. Lou Dort is a little like this. They have some guys that will just go off script and just take a bad shot from time to time, especially when the situation doesn't call for it. I still think I trust Boston's execution better in a playoff series. That is why, despite the fact that I think the Thunder have been playing some really, really good basketball, potentially even better basketball than Boston within the context of the regular season, I still think that Boston is the safest bet to win the title by a pretty decent margin. If you agree with me, the Celtics right now are plus 105 to win the conference and plus 240 to win the NBA title. Number 2, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Just one game last week, a win over the Wizards at home. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and Jared Allen all go for 20-plus points. There has been some slippage for the Cavs on offense as of late. So the Cavs are just 5-3 in their last 8 games, 11th in offense over that span. Remember, they're the number 1 offense in the league over the large sample. They're getting beat pretty good on the glass over that span. They're 24th in rebounding. Remember, that was an issue that popped up periodically in the past, especially in the playoffs. Just something to keep an eye on. They have the Bucks this week, and then a really fun road trip at the end of the month that I've had my eye on for a while as an opportunity to learn more about the Cavs. Like, I really want to learn more about the Cavs, not as to whether or not they're good. I know the Cavs are good. I want to learn about how close they are to Boston. And in order to see that, we need to see them play a consistent stretch of tough opponents. And they've had the 3rd easiest schedule in the league to start the season. At the end of this month, they go to Denver, to Golden State, to the Lakers, and to the Mavericks in a 4-game set. That's going to be a great opportunity for us to see the Cavs in a bunch of disadvantageous situations in terms of travel and rest and crowd, obviously, with being on the road. That'll be a great opportunity for us to give a better evaluation to this roster. The Cavs right now are plus 700 to win the Eastern Conference and plus 1,700 to win the NBA Finals. Number 1, the Oklahoma City Thunder. We covered them at the top of the show, so I won't go into any further detail here. But the gist of it is, why I put them number 1 is simple. I think they're playing the best basketball in the NBA right now, within the context of the regular season. In this stretch where they've won 9 out of 10, they have beat Houston comfortably, Dallas comfortably, as well as Golden State, Sacramento, and the Lakers all on the road. Just a really, really impressive stretch of hoops. Right now, the Thunder are plus 180 to win the conference, plus 360 to win the NBA title. Boston and Oklahoma City really starting to separate themselves from the rest of the league. Again, all of these odds are provided by our partner, DraftKings. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. We'll be back tomorrow. Really fun slate tonight, so we'll be back tomorrow with some game reactions as well as some film. And then we'll be out of here, and then we'll be out of there for that. So I think this week the schedule is a little weird because I don't think there's any games on Wednesday. So we're going to get together with the Nerd Sesh guys, and we'll cover basically the plan for this week is we're going to go tomorrow covering the Monday slate, Wednesday covering the in-season tournament championship game, and then I'm going to record with the nerds, and we'll run that at the tail end of the week because of the, again, only 1 game total between Tuesday and Wednesday night. So it's going to get a little funky with the schedule, but we'll have plenty of content coming out. Again, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. I will see you tomorrow morning.